All right, we are live. Welcome to the Left Wing. I'm your host, John Cooper. TJ is not here yet, but he is coming. In the meantime, it'll just be me and our guest, Carlos Alvarez Arianos from the American Opposition. Carlos, how are you doing today?
I'm very well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. I wanted to, so I've been following you, specifically American Opposition, for a little while now. I've really liked what you've been doing on Threads. Seen some stuff on Instagram. I want to give, I also know that you've been organizing with the 501 movement, correct? And but what's the other one that's been putting together?
Indivisible.
Indivisible, that's right. Should have had that off the top of my head. I've been to multiple Indivisible meetings, but I just couldn't remember. But I want to introduce this clip of you for anyone who's unaware. Carlos, sometimes we have guests on here who are a little afraid to speak their mind. I don't believe Carlos is going to be one of them, given what I've seen from him. So I'm just going to share his top clipped post here to give you a little taste of what Carlos is about.
We've got good presidents and bad, smart ones and dumb ones, courageous ones and cowards. But the common thread among all of them is that they loved America, and that despite their flaws, they understood that they worked for the American people. Trump is not like them. He is a liar, a coward, an idiot, and a clown. He is an immature loser who has no understanding of what he's supposed to be doing and whom he's supposed to be doing it for. There is nothing lower than Donald Trump. He is pure ego, narcissism, and greed. And we've already seen what he does with power. He separated families at the border, deployed troops against peaceful protesters, and incited a violent insurrection. He is not a patriot. He is a predator. So to every Republican who still bows before him, who still makes excuses, we say, shame on you. Shame on your cowardice. Shame on your silence. Because this isn't politics. This is about the soul of our nation. So I'm here today to call for Donald Trump's immediate removal from office. The only path forward is for Republicans in Congress to wake the fuck up and recognize that this monster has no business running our country. Impeach, convict, and remove. And then arrest, charge, and imprison. Donald Trump's final days should be spent in a prison cell, paying the price for ruining our nation. We need to hold him accountable for all of the damage that he has done to us. You cannot lead a country you tried to overthrow. You cannot speak for veterans when you mock their service. And you don't deserve the title of president when you're corrupt to your core. So to every American listening, the time for waiting is over. The time to stand up is now. Let this moment be remembered. Let it echo in the halls of power and across the states. Donald Trump is unfit, unworthy, and unwelcome. We don't want revenge. We want accountability. We don't want violence. We want justice. And we will not stop until we get it. Thank you very much.
It's amazing how self-conscious you become watching yourself.
Hey, you shouldn't be self-conscious at all. I'm going to give you maybe the highest compliment I'm capable of giving. but you felt like you were channeling Jason Kelsey's Super Bowl speech. I don't know if you are an Eagles fan or aware, but when I first saw that, I was like, I'm ready to run through a wall. What did that remind me of? And I was like, oh shit. He like even like that cadence, the raspy voice, the energy you came at it with. And honestly, that is the energy, in my opinion, that we need right now. I've been to a lot of protests, these organized marches and stuff, and I have just felt like I wanted more of exactly what you were just giving there. Have you always been like this, or is this something that you have put on yourself in direct opposition to Trump once it's done?
Yeah, you know what's interesting is I started my career as a speechwriter,
Mm-hmm.
and I never thought I'd be giving speeches, and I've trained so many other people on speeches, but I genuinely never thought that public speaking would be part of my life. It started, I gave a keynote address at a publishers conference that became a journal article. And the fact that that transition happened was a credit to the speech, I think, and people liked it. But in this context, I honestly never thought I'd go out there. What happened was that particular speech I gave with Al Green when we were calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And during, like, right before that speech, he had committed to us that he would introduce the articles that he would eventually introduce. So it was a great moment of lobbying for the movement of trying to get somebody to go into Congress and make the push for impeachment, because we wanted to get Democrats on the record to see where we stood with the Democrats more than with the Republicans. But to be honest, the whole speaking thing, I started American Opposition on January 26th, and I started it with a call for a national day of protest on February 5th. Mm-hmm. At the same time, what would become 5051, which was on Reddit at that time, just as a mm-hmm. like a growing organizing effort, they made the same call, and those efforts kind of coalesced, and it became the first national day of protest on February 5th. Immediately after that, I called for the National Day of Protest on President's Day, and I hashtagged it, Not My President Day. 5051 joined our call, but they didn't want to use that hashtag because they didn't want it to be about the legitimacy of the election. Mm-hmm. And so they tagged it No Kings, and that was the beginning of the No Kings tag, which mm-hmm. we all have now come to know. But it's funny because looking back at that speech, I think to where this thing was born, and the fact that not only did I not intend to give speeches, I mean, the first one, I went to Denver. I live in Boulder, and I went to Denver. And I get there, and they said, you have to give a speech because you called for this. You're sort of, you started it, so you have to get up there. And I honestly didn't have a speech, but I made one up on the spot. And it went viral enough to let me know that was going to be a thing that I was now going to be doing. Mm-hmm. But then on the 17th, I was invited to speak in D.C. by 5051 for the big Not My President's Day protest. I spoke right after Leah Greenberg, who is one of the founders of Indivisible. And so that sort of started all coalescing into what we now know as the modern movement, which I think is premised on sort of three organizations at its core. We at American Opposition do the sort of serve as a hub. I always explain that we do what we wish the Democrats were doing, right? Serve as a hub for unification, strategic communications, public engagement, to do opposition research, to do this, the billboard campaigns, things of that nature. 5051 is a national organizing effort, again, democratic, decentralized, and then Indivisible, which is started at the local level and really endeavors to organize locally and then produce national results. And the marriage of those three things, none of which overlap, really, we complement each other. Mm-hmm. And we either work together explicitly or we'll work together non-explicitly, but either way, it ends up being that we all sort of serve the same goal and become the backbone for what has now become sort of, to be fair, this movement on June 6th, we organized the D-Day anniversary protest, which was the largest veterans protest in American history. And then 2 weeks after that, we had the No Kings protest, which was the largest protest in American history, period. So I think it speaks to just the sheer amount of work and virality that this has taken. I mean, us as an organization, we're talking to roughly 40 million Americans per month, which is an insane level of engagement and virality, unlike anything I've ever seen, really. But it's a product of, again, I don't own it. Neither does 5051. Neither does Indivisible. Nobody owns it. I always say nobody's going to owe us thanks when we're done. We're all just going to get together as Americans and thank each other and be grateful that we achieved, hopefully, eliminating the threat of fascism to the United States. But what's nice about it is that, like, really good people showed up and they gave it everything, and we got this thing off the ground. And even the media, which is sort of attempted at every turn to ignore what we're doing, has finally given up and admitted that the sheer sort of size and scope of what we've achieved is worthy of their attention. And so it's been an uphill battle the whole way, but somehow, here we are with a movement in our hands that is legitimately trying to to respond to the biggest threat our democracy's ever experienced, other than the Civil War. And we're doing it again on the backs of people who are volunteering. I'm not getting paid for it. I'm genuinely about to go broke because of it, maybe. But the fact that so many Americans stood up and came together and delivered, and then I think of the personal side of that and the relationships that I've built, the people that I've come to know and trust, and and it's just it's my personal Mona Lisa. It's like my moment in time when I get to, and keep in mind that in 2020 I oversaw Strategic Comms efforts for Protect Democracy, which was part of a collective campaign that Time Magazine credited with saving the 2020 election. So it was nice to be sort of the person whose effort took hold here, because I was able to leverage that experience directly. Like, I didn't have a learning curve into this on the back end. I knew the groups I needed to talk to. I knew the moves I needed to make in order to make the thing go viral. I work in communications. I knew how to how to figure it out with the media, navigate the against their blockade and that kind of stuff. So I feel very lucky to have been in the right place at the right time, to be able to leverage my experience and skill, and to then be joined by an insanely talented cast of characters in developing what is now, commonplace, and what, again, we don't own anymore. I now show up at protests and I'm a participant. I still organize, but it's grown much bigger than any of us and any group or any individual. And it's just an awesome thing to witness America stand up for itself.
No, it's not about any one person. It's about coming together, as you said. The only way that we are going to defeat the powers that be is by standing together side by side, right. And making it not about any one of us, but about the goals that we all seek to collectively accomplish, even with people on our sides that we don't always agree with, which is something I think in the specific, large, King's protests, all those have done an incredible job of just bringing groups of people together that I have never seen together before. Like, I was marching at the protest in Philly, and one moment I'm talking to DSA organizers. The next moment I'm talking to an 85-year-old white grandma who's never been to a protest before. And it's very cool to see how many people we've been able to activate through these mass protest movements. And before I get to one question I have specifically about them, just wanted to say your speech got quite the applause in our audience. Zeke says, "Damn." Colby says, "Okay, modern day political pioneer." Huge Ass said, "Damn, dude, that speech was incredible, Carlos." And Huge Ass doesn't give compliments like that very often. So a very good speech. Really a fan of what you're doing. One of the critiques I've seen thrown at some of the protests that you've mentioned that you've helped organize is that they aren't, for lack of a better word, tough enough. They're more parades, family gathering activities with a political bent. And I have been certainly very critical of those criticisms, because to me, you got to draw on the big tent. And I think coming from you, hearing that speech and how fired up you are, seeing a lot of the stuff, the very combative and aggressive messaging that you put out there, it honestly makes those critiques seem silly. But have you seen people on the left talking like that, and what would you say to kind of answer that criticism?
Yeah, I mean, look, everybody wants a civil war because they think it's sexy, but that's not real life.
Mm-hmm.
violence is a loss for the nation. I mean, I think people have to remember that we have to be adults. And I say this very seriously. This country is worthy of a resistance that protects the core components of the country. We live in a special place, which is why we're trying to defend it. We're not trying to to create a new country. We're trying to protect the one we have and make it better. And that is our mission, and it is very simple. I am not here to overthrow the US government. I am here to remove Donald Trump, who is a cancer, and preserve the best of what we have, and then hopefully fix it so that these issues never arise again. We are at a moment in time, both globally and nationally, where we have severe threats from far right groups that are born out of a social evolution that's leaving a lot of people behind. And we have to recognize that the issues that people are grieving against, whether fair or not, we have to confront that reality, head on, right? What MAGA is saying is valid to MAGA, and we have to deal with that reality and the fact that they are a large enough group to define our political outcomes. And so you can't just reimagine the setting and say, I wish I were fighting these people on these terms with these tools. We have to dance with the one who brung us and protect the country we have. So I would say, first of all, you spoke about it. It's a large tent. The national protests are important because they build momentum. A movement has to move. And once a movement in a country as complicated and large and powerful as ours, once a movement is moving, it tends to be impossible to stop. So generating movement momentum, it requires the grandmother and the DSA member, everybody coming together. Additionally, we're modeling democracy, right? We're showing people that those people can coexist and work together despite not having the same set of beliefs. So we're modeling the country we wish to exist in through our protest movement and showing people that people who can disagree on a lot of things can still come together when they know it's important and work together in common cause towards a common goal. So that's part one. Part two is that the national protests are step one of a broader strategy. And the strategy becomes more aggressive as remember, Donald Trump is going to set the terms of the fight. We're going to win it. But ultimately, fascism is violence. Any violence in this movement will start from Donald Trump. We've already seen that. The deployment of troops in LA, I was at the front lines in LA. I led that march, and I had to stare those troops in the face. And I'll tell you, any violence that starts here is going to start from the fascists, because fascism is violence. Democracy is peace. Our power, whether people find it sexy or not, our power comes from our peaceful persistence, just like it did for Gandhi, just like it did for MLK. And there are components of this that, like civil disobedience, where we're going to break some laws, but even when we do that, we're going to do it in the spirit of John Lewis, what he called good trouble, the idea of breaking laws peacefully, just to show that those laws are, inequitable or whatever the case may be. But as we move towards campaign season, we're going to target the protests at the offices and where it's legal at the homes of the representatives who are most vulnerable. We're also going to seek to replace ineffective Democrats with better Democrats, because a huge part of our problem here is that the Democratic Party doesn't just suck at strategic communications. They're the worst I've ever seen. And the fact that they are responsible for the response, the institutional response to this, that Cory Booker could speak for 25 hours in the Senate and then 2 days later vote for Jared Kushner's father to be ambassador to France. That's a major component of the problem here, is that both sides are beholden to a patronage system that can no longer continue to exist if we're going to hope to sustain a democracy beyond the 250 years. So what I would say to those people is, look, we are grown-ups. I know what I'm doing. I've done this before. My first job in my life, I was 15 years old, and I was the editor of the online edition of the largest newspaper in the Caribbean. I had ultimately a staff of 7 people when I was 15 years old. I come at this from a perspective of maturity, emotional intelligence, and understanding what we need to do, building a strategy to get there, and then hoping to lead people to follow that strategy and all coalesce around it and unify a movement. Because if we're not unified, that becomes a separate and much more important sort of issue, right? But that takes time. just like people who are asking, everybody who writes, we need a general strike. I've been working on a general strike for 6 months. It is the most complicated political outcome to deliver under our system. It may actually be impossible, but we're working on it every day. And if you're going to throw out the line, we need it. Great. Give us some ideas on how you would achieve it that we haven't tried, right? Because ultimately, I'm not here for self-service. Frankly, I would have done much better had I not started this. This is a deviation from me, from a life that was very comfortable, and now I'm not comfortable anymore, and that's a product of this. So, but I'm here because, again, I got experience in 2020 that I can leverage. I feel like until somebody better comes along, I will do my job of leading. I will continue to go out and express those thoughts that way, because that's my inner monologue. And I find that my speeches tend to connect with people because it sounds like what they're thinking and what they're feeling. And I'm going to try to represent for that truth. When this is over, I don't want to be remembered. I don't want to be celebrated. Frankly, I would really appreciate it if everybody just left me the fuck alone. But in the meantime, while I'm here, we're talking to former flag officers to understand where the military's at. We're doing very high-level opposition research to try to bring down some of these characters from within. You've seen that. You just don't know it. We're going to continue to apply all of these tools. We're going to continue to focus the protests and make them more aggressive in the sense of aiming them at specific people, creating real pressure. They need to feel the fear that they're making us feel, even if we do it peacefully. That persistence that I talked about, that patient persistence, can create real fear. And then as campaign season comes around, we're going to cut off their funding. We're going to campaign against them. We're going to try to get better Democratic candidates like Mamdani in New York. We're going to try to replicate not that person, but that model for communicating, and try to encourage people to connect with their constituents and be real, and to tell us who they are, and to show us that they're going to fight Trump, right? That's our measuring stick for supporting people, and build a slate of candidates to replace the Hakeem Jeffries and the Chuck Schumers of the world that are not only standing in our way, but too proud to understand that they are the problem. And it's ironic that what Chuck Schumer did to Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer should now do to Chuck Schumer.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm here. I genuinely understand that everybody's impatient, that everybody sort of thinks that violence is the only way. But let me tell you, that is not true. The lessons of history on this are not just clear, they are sort of the clearest lessons of history. If we want to protect what we have and make it better rather than replace it, we need to remain peaceful. If they bring violence, we have the right to defend ourselves. That is an innate right that we all have as citizens and as humans. But we will never be the ones starting it. That just won't happen, because frankly, our power is our peaceful persistence. Our power is our numbers. Our power is our clarity of vision, and our power is our strategy. And on those fronts, we have a lot of good on our side, way more than the other side. I think we've seen now with what Donald Trump is facing today, that he really doesn't have a plan beyond his plan A. He doesn't know how to pivot.
He barely has a plan A, to be fair.
Right. He has a modus operandi A, if you will, a way he approaches everything. And we're exhausting that ability for that to continue to function. And by the way, what you're seeing now with Epstein and all that stuff, and I know we'll talk about that later, but what you're seeing now that he's facing 4 challenges in is because his entire system has been dismantled one step at a time. Now, some of that may not be obvious and evident, but it is a very deliberate process that we're taking here to cutting off the blood supply to Donald Trump's heart, so that eventually it will stop working. And I just say to the American people, please trust us. We know what we're doing. We've done it before. And we're ready for this fight, not just to represent the problem, but to fix it, and then to get the fuck out. And ideally, I can just ride my motorcycles for the rest of my life, find a job that takes me through to retirement. And I honestly will never ask for nor want any credit for any contribution I make, because what I'm doing now is what I'm supposed to be doing as a citizen of the United States. It's citizenship isn't just the benefits, it's also the responsibilities. What I'm doing is my version of what everybody should be doing, which is what can I maximally do to protect this democracy that I believe in, and leave it for my kids and for their kids, and figure out how to deliver. But again, this is not a joke. This is not, politics is the only realm where people tend to argue with the experts. I don't go into my doctor and say, no, you shouldn't do the surgery this way. When I had eye surgery recently, I wasn't debating the methodology of the surgery with the doctor. And I find it funny because we as citizens do have a role to play in informing each other and ourselves and et cetera. But I find that a lot of people sort of take their ideals and make them seem much more doable than they actually are. And again, I don't fault that, but I just want to caution people. This is going to take time. This is going to hurt. This country made a choice to elect Donald Trump, and that choice is a huge choice which comes with a lot of damage. And the best analogy I can give people, it's like we're like Luke Skywalker headed towards, the weak point in the Death Star. But while we're headed there, a bunch of our colleagues are going to take fire, and we're going to get hurt. Our own ship is going to get hurt. There's no way we come out of this clean. The best we can hope for is a free and fair midterm election to give Americans one more chance to do the right thing. That will be it. That will be the final choice. And based on that choice, then we figure out where we go from there. But ultimately, that is our mission. It is as simple as that. It's not going to be clean there. I can't tell you how many issues I wish I could fight, how many damages I wish I could fight. I think of all the migration situation, and as a Latino, how passionate I am about it. That's not my battle, right? My battle is Trump. And so I have to keep my eye on the ball. But while I'm doing that, I'm aware of how much damage is being done to our fleet, if you will. And sadly, we're going to have a lot of rebuilding to do, particularly now with the big shitty bill and all of that. We have a lot of work ahead of us. Step one is, can we get to another free and have a free and fair election and give America one more choice at the ballot box? And ideally, before then, can we get Donald Trump to resign? Because what's funny is that his psychological conditions do create the conditions under which we might be able to get him to do that. And we talked to a lot of psychologists who privately to try to assess how to maximally sort of use his psychology against him. But the question of whether we can get him to resign is an open question. I think we're on that path right now and trying to do it. But if we can't, then the midterm elections become our backstop. And then the question of, can we get enough Americans to do the right thing in the midterm elections? Because remember, Democrats are so bad at this that a lot of people still think that not only is Donald Trump doing a good job, but that he's doing a great job because he's doing what he said he would do. And the fact that Democrats haven't even branded an opposition campaign like the Contract with America. They haven't set leaders that people can connect to. They've really failed in every way. And there are individual Democrats that are doing a good job, but they're not feeding a centralized strategy. And all of that work gets thrown away. It doesn't aggregate because they're not feeding a joint narrative. So we have a lot of work to do, a lot of stepping up to do. And frankly, I'm sorry for the very long answer, but to answer those criticisms is simply to say, please know that we know what we're doing. That's not the problem here. The problem here is, can we get everybody on the same page and joining us to do it? Can we raise enough money? For example, I think our organization has total raised less than $50,000. The woman that said the N-word and got fired for it raised $700,000. How is it possible that American opposition, which sits at the center of the opposition movement, which has shown what it can do as a movement, and that we've barely cracked 50 grand, and that racist people are, and that the guy that was on with Mehdi, who called himself a fascist, has outraised us. Like, we need to take stock of that for a moment as a nation and figure out how to give this movement the resources it needs to move, right? But again, sorry for the very long answer, but those criticisms just need to be couched in more context, I think, and people need to understand that we're not lacking a plan, we're not lacking a strategy, we're lacking support. And that comes in showing up, that comes in giving the movement money, volunteering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It starts at your local chapters for Indivisible 5051. It comes to us and joining us and signing up for our newsletter, keeping posted with what we're doing, when we call for those targeted protests, showing up, putting your bodies on the line, all of that stuff is necessary. And so I would say people shouldn't have to worry so much about the broad strategy. They should be focused on making sure they participate and they fuel that strategy.
So you said a lot there, Carlos. And there's two pathways I want to go down here. The first that we're going to get to next is the Democrats and what they're doing incorrectly, to put it in the most mild way possible. But first, I wanted to touch on something that you said about how you're talking to psychologists, how to get Trump to resign. And I'm sure a lot of people heard that and they were like, come on, no way. But I have been saying for months now that I don't know if it's the most likely outcome, but there is a very strong chance that we do not make it to the end of these 4 years with Trump as president. Whether that means he resigns, whether that means we win enough seats in the midterm elections to impeach him, whether that means, his veins can't take it anymore. Whatever the case might be, it seems like a far more likely situation than a lot of people would expect. And I would love to hear more about how you're targeting that, because I saw some posts that American Opposition made. I don't know if they came from you, about the South Park episode last night and how that is an effective way to go at a guy with this kind of ego. What have you learned through that research and through your efforts with that?
Yeah, it's what we've learned is that it's kind of more black and white than gray.
Mm-hmm.
That it triggers that Donald Trump is facing a couple of psychological conditions, and in his case, they're very acute, right? They run his system, and because of that, and to paraphrase the experts, they're more like switches rather than they are like dimmers.
Mm-hmm.
So if you put Donald Trump on tilt, if you put him in the wrong position for his comfort, he will want to escape it immediately, viscerally. That's what his brain wants to do. He wants to get back to terra firma as he understands it. And any form of displacement from that condition, sustained for long enough, will basically shut his system down. So a resignation would come largely outside of his own control, as a need to escape an intolerable condition for his psyche. And that's the opportunity. And frankly, the psychologists we talk to are breaking their ethical code by talking to us, because they've never really diagnosed Donald Trump directly. They've obviously, but they're giving us guidance based on what they see. So it's not perfect. But what I've come away with is, we have a very clear idea of what can do that. One of the things that can is protest art, the way you saw South Park, the diminishment of Donald Trump as an orchestrated thing, everybody from Stephen Colbert. And when it's done really well, the entire nation feels it. You feel, they call them douche shills, when you feel like for the other guy, because they're like, when you used to watch The Office and Michael Scott, you just cringe. That cringe is easy to feel with Trump. And that's actually kind of what we want to be feeling. If we're feeling that, that means we're putting him in the right place. So artists doing that is a huge benefit. That's what South Park did so effectively last night. Never mind that they couched it in the Paramount debate, which I thought was a brilliant sort of way to double the impact, right? Because he thought he had settled the matter with Paramount. And now Paramount has become sort of the deliverer of the most effective attack that we've ever seen against Donald Trump. And again, we need people like the creators of South Park to come and join that effort. And I mean, I'm talking to artists everywhere. Please make sure that you use your brilliance against this guy, because he is particularly susceptible to that form of mockery from people that he wants to impress. One of the tools that helps me is, first, my father has elements of Donald Trump, but I also grew up as the nephew of Oscar de la Renta in New York. And I know the society that Donald Trump wants to impress. I come from it. And you know, it's like I grew up in the Dominican Republic under an elected fascist. So I know what Donald Trump is trying to achieve, but I also know what society he came from. And my uncle Oscar would have never hung out with Donald Trump, but Donald Trump would have desperately wanted Uncle Oscar's respect, right? And so it's weird because it feels like I've been put in this place in time because of a particular set of sort of insular experiences that are hugely improbable for a kid from the Dominican Republic, but that have informed me enough to know that this is a psychological game with Donald Trump that we are playing. This is not a political game.
Yeah.
We are trying to influence his mind, our audience. On one front, our audience is one, it's him. And then we deliver those messages through a lot of different channels, and then we get others like South Park. We didn't coordinate with them, but they come along and they do it because people aren't stupid. Everybody's on the same page. We all know what needs to get done, and people jump in. And so that continues to feed the strategy, and we move on. But right now, Donald Trump is stuck because he has no way out of this. And that's going to create a vicious cycle in his mind. And our job right now is to follow up South Park with like 3 more similar things in short order in order to maximally pressure that vicious cycle. Because that cycle, by the way, lives entirely within Donald Trump's head, but it can produce immediate outcomes for all of us. Mm-hmm. And as you said, whether it happens or not, we have to maximally try to make it happen and then backstop it with the midterm election. But yeah, it's a huge part of what we're doing.
It's really interesting because like when I saw those clips, I haven't actually sat down and watched the full episode yet, but when I saw the clips of the South Park that aired last night, my first knee-jerk reaction was, nah. You know, I was just like, this is the same sort of South Parky shtick they've been doing for years and years and years and years. And I was a big fan growing up. As a 28-year-old, I was right there, the prime of South Park, right in my middle school years, you know. And then as time went on, I lost the taste for it, right? And when I saw it this morning, I was like, we're kind of doing the same sort of shit here. Is this really going to be effective? And I was surprised by how much attention it got. It genuinely, it wasn't just like a little tiny flash in the pan. It was being talked about a lot by a lot of people. And I think the reason my initial knee-jerk reaction was wrong was for the same reason a lot of people misunderstand Donald Trump's claim to power. Because we like to think of MAGA as his base, right? We're like, they're never going to be flinched by anything. They have sworn fealty to Donald Trump. He is the leader of the cult of personality, and anything he does, they're going to follow. But that's actually a pretty small part of the coalition. It's the most sizable part and the most dangerous part, but there's a lot of other pieces of this coalition. Well, you know, you have your bog standard Republicans who just kind of vote against Democrats for Donald Trump. And you also have what I'll call your Roganites, the people like Joe Rogan who are more just displeased with the two-party system. Looks like we got TJ here. TJ, we're talking about the South Park episode. We're jumping right in the middle of it. And I just said I at first didn't think it was going to be effective, but it seemed to be much more effective than I had originally believed. And I think it's because it speaks directly towards those people that were kind of raised on South Park or have that sort of nihilistic mentality, that they just don't like what they're seeing in front of them and want to rage against it. And that was utilized by Trump in 2024. But now that he is the face, he is the power, and he's doing all of the same shit that they've always hated, he's actually more susceptible to these kinds of attacks because the people who I think are most easily peeled away from his coalition are the most likely to be affected by the attacks like the one South Park made last night. What would you say to that, Carlos?
Well, first of all, TJ, welcome.
Hello, Carlos.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining the show.
Thank you for having me. What I would say is this. I don't think we can accurately describe Donald Trump's base or of support as a coalition. It's a cult. Mm-hmm. And it's a cult because it forces people to conform to it rather than conforming to people.
Mm-hmm.
So a coalition, a broad tent, whenever you think of a coalition, you think of people or groups or people who have disparate interests coming together and negotiating with each other, right? Whether explicitly or implicitly, settling with each other and giving each other room. That's what we see at the protests. Those are coalitions. We see people who disagree with you, but they disagree with each other on a lot of things, but they have a shared purpose and they come together and they accommodate each other. Donald Trump's base doesn't accommodate for each other. They are all pointed in the same direction. That is a requirement to entry. So they're all in different places, as you said. There you have the Rogan sort of toxic masculinity thread. You have the traditional Republicans. You have sort of the South and the what you would call the KKK component of this, or the Confederate component. I mean, there's a lot of different elements, but they're all required to sort of to sign on to bills they don't agree with. By the way, you have conservatives in that movement who wouldn't want to add $4 trillion to the national debt, but they've just done it. And they did it for Donald Trump. They did it as a requirement for membership in that cult. It is nothing less than that. No actual conservative would have voted for the big, beautiful bill. That is not a thing that the Republican Party would have ever stood for, right? It goes against every single, and part of the test of the cult is to challenge your core beliefs and make you overwhelm them. That's how they test your loyalty. Will you vote for a thing that you would never have voted for if you were just following your core belief system, right? So my argument to you is that it's a cult, and therefore it makes it somewhat easier. Because I'll tell you, I'm a Red Sox fan. I'm a Boston sports fan in general, but particularly the Red Sox. I'm a kid from the Dominican Republic. Baseball is my love. It's one of the core loves of my life. John Henry, the owner of the Red Sox, traded Mookie Betts and found out immediately that the people who most love you will become your greatest haters overnight. That's how cults work.
Mm-hmm.
And so our opportunity here is that there's a lot of people who just want to burn the whole thing down. They've been left behind, and rather than pulling themselves up, they want to bring others down to their level. That, I think, is a core sort of, and you see it a lot. There's a crisis with young men who are looking for meaning and purpose, and they're feeling that the culture isn't matching up to their expectation. The treatment of women that we've seen and the disregard for women's rights is connected to like a failure of men here to set expectations, to build themselves up, to give themselves a better future, and to make themselves interesting so that they can compete. And rather than compete, they just complain. And now we're seeing downstream effects of that is that the Republican Party is now basically pro-child rape. And those things are connected. And they're societal trends that have nothing to do with Donald Trump, but he captures them and he channels them. And my point to you is, if we can show people a better way, if we can deprogram some of them, then the movement happens very quickly. And when the Red Sox experience that, Trump is about to experience that, is that as soon as these people become disconnected and they realize, holy shit, you're a fraud, their love turns to hate very, very quickly and very passionately. And as a Red Sox fan who was angry at ownership for the past 5 years for failing to deliver a team worthy of the franchise, I can tell you that hate is really hard to turn off. In a way, you become punitive. And we want that to happen with Donald Trump's supporters right now. And the nice thing is, and I say nice in a relative sense, but is that he's giving us so much ammunition to do that because he just killed their health insurance. I mean, the population that is most impacted by Donald Trump's policies is the MAGA population. They don't know that yet, but they're about to find out. One of the things we're going to do next year is put up a bunch of digital billboards explaining to them personally how much Donald Trump has cost them and comparing prices when he took office to where they are next year and showing it in red and green so that every time they drive home and back to work, etc., they see that Donald Trump, by the numbers, is fucking them, right?
Carlos,
but yeah,
I want to start because I want to point something out here. I said on the show, so seems like you have a marketing communications background. I also work in marketing. And one of the things I said on the show when the Texas floods were happening was, shit, why aren't the Democrats? Because we knew as soon as he got funded FEMA, it would be unfathomably lucky for there not to be a disaster that he was responsible for. So we should have already had targeted ads in the locations that were affected, ready to go, and it just didn't happen. It's not that hard to set this shit up.
Honestly, they are so bad that if there was a jury, a jury trial, and the jury had no context, and one side was arguing that the Democrats are complicit with the Republicans, and the other side was arguing that they are just incompetent. The complicit side would probably win the trial. That's how bad this looks. They are so bad at this that I, who work professionally in this, have never seen anyone do it worse. And to have it be the people that are supposed to defend us from the biggest threat we've ever faced as a nation is a ludicrous situation. And the fact that, for example, my main recommendation to Joe Biden at the time was one term, right? One term set up for the future of the Democratic Party. They ignored that. The fact that now my main recommendation during the transition, the reason I launched American Opposition is because I said to them, a contract with America for how we deal with Trump and what in the future, an affirmative vision for the future. Name it, give it a name so that everybody can fuel the same campaign. They still haven't done it. I mean, it's malpractice to a degree that honestly, I think it looks like complicity. How can Cory Booker speak for 25 hours on the Senate floor, set a record for the longest filibuster in American history, and then 2 days later vote for Charles Kushner, Jared Kushner's father, who is, by the way, a convicted felon who was pardoned by Trump, to be ambassador to France, which is the most important diplomatic post short of the United Kingdom. Like, what are we doing here as Democrats? How is Cory Booker still a member of this party after doing that? How is Hakeem Jeffries, a guy I heard him described as the charisma of a dial tone, and I thought that was generous. How is he the leader of the Democrats in the House? How is Chuck Schumer, who is literally the worst communicator I've ever seen, the leader of the Democrats in the Senate? It's so bad, it looks like complicity, and whether it's complicity or not doesn't matter, because ultimately it's so much more a problem than a solution. And if we can't turn the Democrats around, our hope goes down to almost zero. So our main mission right now is to try to make this party a better party. And they are fighting us every step of the way.
Guys, I want to be very clear to the people in the audience. We don't talk to our guests before they come on very much, besides just scheduling them. I didn't give Carlos the 18 talking points that me and TJ have been hitting for the past several months. He has independently arrived at all the same conclusions as us, because we've been saying all of that exact same shit. TJ, I'm going to throw to you just because you're hopping in here. How you doing?
I'm good. Sorry for being late, folks. Trying to TJ just wandering in like he owns the damn place. But yeah, I didn't see the South Park episode. I heard people talking about it and everything. South Park has always been, well, not always. I used to really like it when I was young and everything, but it's just been annoying now. It's we're going to critique both sides and everything, and we're smarter than everybody else because we take the central position, or really a libertarian position, which is not really a central one, but that's kind of how they roll it. So what happened? I know that they made fun of Trump, but what exactly went down? Did you guys see it?
So watch the clips. I mean, they first of all, they have him in the same sort of animation style and dating Satan in the same way they had Saddam Hussein was in the South Park movie. So that was like you're a dictator. They're talking about the Epstein shit. They also played they had this whole conflict where he sued the town of South Park and they had to make an ad for him, and they used this AI generated clip of him walking through the desert, stripping naked, landing on the floor, and then his dick comes up and he's like, I forget even what he's like, I will fight for you, tiny little dick. And classic South Park shit, right? And that's why I was like, is this really gonna land? But I think it did land because, as I said, the people who need to hear it are the ones that find it funny still.
Well,
I think it worked in that way.
I also think that we as a society, because we've all Americans are weak for narcissists, but we also know them really well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think everybody in America knows when something's going to bug Donald Trump.
Yeah.
Like when it's going to work.
And it did. I was honestly like, is he going to be stupid enough to take the bait? Obviously, the right answer is
no.
Ignore it. No, he couldn't do it. He had
There's literally zero chance.
There is no slight too small for Donald Trump. I really, anybody come out with anything and he is going guns blazing on that. I wanted to address what I think you guys were talking about when I first got in here about the coalition of Trump supporters and everything. And it's true. Like, Trump supporters are a rabid cult, and it's not necessarily because one particular message. Like, it really isn't. It's like, it's kind of like a projection, because you have the group of, flat earthers, incels, xenophobes, religious fundamentalists, online edgelords. All of them have goals that sometimes overlap, but many of their principles and their goals directly diverge. I mean, absolutely diverge. There's no convergence at all, but they like Trump and his affectation and what he represents, and they see themselves, or at least the version of themselves that they want to represent the nation. And what John and I discuss all the time is, the thing about Trump is, if you don't understand that Trump is charismatic, you probably have no charisma. You don't know how charisma works. That is how I heard someone say that, and it's absolutely true. But Trump offers something that I wish we had on our side, or hell, just our philosophy in general in major politics. And it's someone who will fight, someone who is not going to back down. Like, this is my position. I don't give a fuck if you think it's a good idea or not. We're going to charge forward with this. So sorry about that. And this is, you can see, like, Trump's positions that he took in 2016, the statements that he made, just just with immigration alone. Like, John pulled up a stat on this a few months ago, showing the nation's attitude towards immigration over the last 10 years. Absolute direct reflection of Donald Trump's influence, that Trump's decisions or Trump's point of view wasn't a popular one, but he fought for it anyway. And now it is. And I think that we can learn a lot from that. We need to stop hiding. Yeah, you mentioned, Carlos, that Hakeem Jeffries, what did you say? He had the charisma of, I can't remember who it was.
A dial tone.
A dial
Somebody,
tone, yeah.
It wasn't me who said it, but when I read it, I went, that's exactly right.
And I was thinking about this last month, because we shit on Hakeem Jeffries all the time here. And not most of the time, but maybe half the time, quarter of the time, I'm watching Hakeem Jeffries and I'm saying, you know what? If I just saw his words written on paper, I wouldn't have any complaints. Like, that doesn't usually happen, but a lot of times it does. Like, okay, what he says is correct, but that's not enough, folks. It's not. Like, you need to have someone who galvanizes the audience. You need to have someone that people want to listen to. And Chuck Schumer's not pulling this off. Hakeem Jeffries isn't pulling this off. Cory Booker, we caught a lot of shit on this show because we pointed out that Cory Booker is doing a weird performance and we're not quite sure why. John, I don't know if I sure did, when people saying, well, why are you dunking on this guy? He's then when he voted for Kushner a couple days later, vindicated, knew it. Like, this is and he's coming out with a book.
It didn't take long to be vindicated.
No. It's just like, what are you guys standing for? Like, what is the actual goal that you're trying to fight against here? And I gotta say, Carlos, I told this John too, I am not quite as optimistic as you and John are that we're going to be able to change the minds of Trump supporters anytime in the near future. I really am not. And even pointing out, because I think Texas, we talked about this too, John, where you can directly point to the negative consequences of Trump's policies or Republican policies in general. They don't give a fuck. They don't. And I say, it's like, if like policy hurting people change their minds, Alabama would not be the way it is. Mississippi would not be the way it is. We have people who are dyed in the wool with this nonsense. Now, perhaps it's possible they'll change their minds on Trump. They changed it on Bush, but Trump is 10 times more popular than George Bush ever was with Republicans. But if they do switch on Trump, I have zero confidence they're going to make the right decision afterward. If you stuck with Donald Trump for 10 years, you don't have like the critical thought capacity to actually make the right decision. I mean, I just don't. If you voted this guy 3 times in a row and Trump collapses, let's say I don't know. He does come out to be in the Epstein files. I still think he'll keep most of his followers. I really do. I think they'll just say, well, Epstein wasn't a bad guy after all. But yeah, I'm not too confident about that.
No, I mean, look, it. You know, Hakeem Jeffries isn't the problem, but he's not the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And Hakeem Jeffries is a politician, guys. He's just a politician. He was handpicked by Nancy Pelosi to follow her. He is very good behind the scenes at managing his caucus. There's a lot of things that he's talented at. He's just not the guy for the moment. And the Democrats need to remember this. In an attention economy, you have to produce a show, and it has to be more interesting than the other guy's show.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Simple. Who are your characters? Well, Gavin Newsom is a handsome dude. He's controversial sometimes because he, set up a stupid podcast and started platforming the worst of the worst, right? But that draws attention. And every time he's out there, people are covering him. The media covers him organically. So get Gavin Newsom out there. Pete Buttigieg. There is not a single instance where Pete Buttigieg doesn't go into enemy territory and look like a badass.
Mm-hmm.
So organize that. AOC does the same thing. There's a lot. The Democrats have a deep bench of talent, of people that they could lead with. Jasmine Crockett, others. And they are all, by the way, it's a Big Tent party. And some of these, Gavin Newsom is more centrist, whereas AOC would be more on the left. And you have not just a deep bench, but you have a deep bench and that represents your broad coalition. And if you build a strategy for media engagement that is premised around the people who draw the eyes naturally, then use them. But Chuck Schumer ain't it. Hakeem Jeffries ain't it. None of the people that think they're good are good. And all of the ones that think they're good are too proud to quit. And that's the part where, like, what they did to Joe Biden by getting him to quit, they need to do to each other now. Because I don't give a shit that Hakeem Jeffries sucks at communicating. I only care about it because I need a better voice leading the House. Mm-hmm. I don't care that Chuck Schumer sucks in general at everything.
In general at everything.
He's like the worst. But we need to get him out of office. And then the compounding problem is that there's activism around Gaza that nobody wants to touch. It's become the new third rail on the Democratic side. And the reason it's become the third rail is because the activism itself hasn't been very effective. But what it's done is it's created sort of a purity testing on the left in general. Now, we all want the same outcome for Gaza. We want the violence to stop yesterday. We want Benjamin Netanyahu to go to face war crimes charges for what he's doing to the people of Gaza. But most importantly, we want humanitarian assistance to get in immediately, and we need to start rebuilding and building towards a two-state solution. Most people agree with some version of that. So what's interesting is that the strategic outcome is shared, but the methodology is not, and there's a lot of infighting. And these people that I'm talking about they're not even capable of managing that internally. They don't know how to navigate it properly. Hakeem Jeffries is refusing to endorse the guy who won the primary for mayor of New York, who is the most exciting candidate the party has had since Barack Obama. That is institutional suicide. And it's being done out of some desperate need to fulfill the needs of donors or to fulfill the needs of corporate America or to protect, quote unquote, a mainstream Democratic Party, which they believe is the only version of the Democratic Party that can win because it was the one that won under Clinton and under Obama. But the reality is that Joe Biden did not win for those reasons. Joe Biden governed to the left of both of those guys. Joe Biden actually operated a campaign that represented far more for a more progressive agenda. And it's funny because even me personally, I may not share that agenda, but I know that that's where the enthusiasm lives. And anytime you go to a Bernie event or an AOC event, you see that enthusiasm living. And the fact that a party can just negate that because they don't want to admit that they suck. And they don't want to reimagine their party around the deep venture. It's like having a team, a Major League Baseball team, where everybody in your AAA squad is better than everybody on your main team, but you refuse to replace them because they're too proud.
Yeah.
And this is about fucking winning baseball games, man. We can't help Gaza. We can't do anything if we don't win. So we have to build the party to win, not a party to placate the concerns of old people who suck and are not willing to accept it. And so my job as an outside influence is to point that out and to say, this starts with Democrats letting go of their pride and figuring out what is the version of the Democratic Party that is most built to win. Let's build that. Let's elevate the voices within that are most capable of drawing attention. Let's fucking put together not just a soap opera and not just a Latino soap opera. Let's make a Turkish soap opera of the Democratic Party that the media can't ignore. And let's sustain that show for 3.5 years. And let's beat the shit out of these people, because the fact, I mean, look, from 1928 to 2008, there were 40 years of Democrats and 40 years of Republicans. The Democrats averaged twice as much economic growth. They spent less money. And if you had invested $10,000 in an index fund in 1928 and left it in the market only under Republican presidents, you would have ended up with $11,500 in 2008. Again, that's a net profit of $1,500 over 80 years of the Republican presidents. $50,000 if you don't count the Great Depression, a net profit of $40,000. But if you had left it in the market only under Democrats, you would have ended up with $311,500. A net profit. And so the reality is that this party just needs to get over itself, and these people need to get over themselves. They need to figure out that they are shitty, like really bad, and that they are not the answer, and that the country hangs in the balance, and that Hakeem Jeffries shouldn't be too proud to say, you know what, I ain't it, and I got to go. Because if I don't go, then the danger to America grows, and I'm a grown-up enough to know that I don't have to quit Congress. I can just surrender leadership to somebody else who's better than me. And by the way, there are many people in Congress right now who are Democrats who are better than Hakeem Jeffries. I think of like Maxwell Frost. I think of AOC. I think of a lot of these voices. And these people can connect better. They have better messaging. I think, who's the senator from Connecticut? I'm blanking on his name. Chris. Yeah, he's better. Like, there's just a lot of people who are better at this. Eric Swalwell is better. Like, there's a lot of voices. And they can compete for attention. That's healthy. But what we can't do is continue to like prop up Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, man. This is ain't it.
Yeah, Chris Murphy is who you're thinking of.
Chris Murphy,
Carlos. Yeah, and it's like I really enjoy Carlos in general. Just I love this guy already. I've just seen him for a few minutes already, but I especially love the baseball analogies, and we're going to stick with this. I think this is going to be a recurring theme for the show today. And speaking of like players who had, 2 good seasons and have sucked ever since and not shut up afterward, like Paul Begala and James Carville, crushed it in the Clinton era. And right. I think that's such a good point, Carlos, that they have never left it, and neither has the Republican Party in general. And for those of you who weren't around for this, like Bill Clinton ended up winning. He was a senator from or the governor from Arkansas. And so it was kind of a Jimmy Carter style coalition where he said, all right, we are going to have a Democratic representative and of our a Democratic candidate for president, but he's going to be a right-wing Democrat, like a blue dog Democrat. Right. And he is going to unite as many Southerners as we can possibly get on our side. We're not going to lean too much into the progressive stuff, but he's young, he's cool, he plays the saxophone, he's got, buckets of charisma, which you think politicians don't have charisma now. They don't. Even fewer had it back then. And so when Bill Clinton came along, he blew people away. With just his mannerisms and how he presented himself. And he was palatable enough to the, Southern conservative population that he ended up winning 2 terms, even after a couple of major scandals. And for some reason, that was 30 years ago. And for some reason, the Democratic Party still believes that's what's going to work today, despite of all the evidence that's thrown in front of their face. Like with Mamdani has really pissed a lot of us off that we all this time, we've heard Democratic representatives and pundits saying, shut the fuck up, stop complaining about our people that we have elected in high office, vote blue no matter who. And listen, at the end of the day, I agree with them, honestly. When it fight for who you want in the primary, in the general election, yeah, I think you should vote for the lesser evil, and there is a lesser evil. But now that we have someone on our side who won, they're like, whoa, hold on. Have you considered voting for the sex pest over here? You ever think about that? This guy, maybe he knows what's up. There's an amazing video I saw or audio I saw of him talking to like a senior center, and he's just explaining, well, Mamdani got the under 30 vote. We'd expect them to vote, and they are convinced that anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. Like, it's honestly what he said was word for word what I would say, but he was trying to say it was a bad thing. And it's like, folks, your time has passed. It's gone. Like, do you want to let we somehow let Gen Z men in particular bank hard right? Something I never would have guessed would have happened, 6-8 years ago. And look, maybe Trump, maybe they get disillusioned by Trump and the Republicans. I don't think that they're like conservative at their core, really, it's just a passing fad or whatever. I don't buy that. But the window is pretty short here. We can't allow them to take control of that and just let this go by when we are the party that's supposed to represent them. And I wrote down, I forgot to mention it too, Carlos, where you were saying that the Republicans are awful, but look, the Democratic polls are bad too. Like, it's embarrassing. There's no reason.
They're worse.
Yeah,
they're
there's
worse.
Somehow.
Yeah,
they're
there's
worse.
It's embarrassing.
The approval of Congress, of Democrats in Congress, is at 21%. That's half of Trump's approval. Half.
Yeah.
They're worse. Meaning, if they think Donald Trump is unpopular, they're half as popular.
Yeah.
To your point, first, I think there's a couple of things. The young men thing is not a political function. It's not a political problem, but it's reflecting as a political problem. It's a societal problem. We're not raising young men properly, and we're not raising them to the time. But to go back to your original question about James Carville, Paul Begala, the crew that got Clinton elected, I think once you win 2 elections, you need to quit politics, right? Because what you get is you get married to your own hero worship. I mean, James Carville, when he said it's the economy, stupid, he was right. By the way, that was right before the internet boom, which Bill Clinton took advantage of to balance the budget. Largely governed as a Republican, but achieved all of sort of the Republican dreams in a democratic way without leaving people behind. He was an excellent president. But there was a time and a place for that context. That is not to say, by the way, that the theory that centrist Democrats are not the best option is wrong. Barack Obama was a centrist Democrat, but he had the charisma to generate a movement. And you compound the fact that he could take some votes from the right and keep the votes on the left. That builds a winning coalition. The center is the easiest place to win from. That is still probably true. But the messaging that you need as a centrist Democrat today is very different than what you would have needed during the Obama years, and that's why I reference Biden, because I think one of the things that people ignore about Biden is that Biden's campaign managed to do something which is interesting, which was to use propulsion from the left to overcome the lack of charisma and the age issue and a bunch of other things. And that his mistake was not setting it up properly from the beginning. I literally wrote a memo where I said, and I gave my only podcast I had done to that point, I accepted an invitation for an hour because I was so angry that they hadn't listened to me. I said, this needs to be the grandfather presidency. You need to launch it with an inaugural address that is remembered as the grandfather speech, where you talk about how grandfathers invest in the future and they don't do it for themselves, they do it for the kids. How the wisdom of the fascism and the Cold War so relevant today, and how Joe Biden has that wisdom, and that's why we don't want a 35-year-old president. And that would have been the speech. And then fireside chats, a grandfather talking to other grandfathers once a week, do a programming from the White House, invite a bunch of, just celebrate being a wise old person, and make it a celebration of that for 4 years, setting up for a generational transition in the next election, right? That's what it should have happened. But I go back to that first Biden campaign because it is important to remember that you can use propulsion from the left, and the energy right now is on the left. And frankly, like, we need to have grown-up conversations. We need to talk about how do we deliver better conditions for the people of Gaza? How do we do that without performative activism, without pretzeling ourselves and hating on each other? How do we actually set up for the Democratic Party to pursue the end of genocide in Gaza? How do we actually set up the Democratic Party to answer Trump here on the ground? How do they allow so many pitches to fly right down the middle of the strike zone without swinging? How do we fix this? Because the problem is we're conflating entertainment and politics, and we've been doing that for a long time. And guess what? A Kim Kardashian nation elects Donald Trump. It's idiocracy. That's literally who the president is. If you celebrate Kim Kardashian and Jake Paul, your president is Donald Trump. Of course he is. It's the real world life where the Secretary of Transportation planes are fucking hitting each other because the president, the Secretary of Transportation, his main experience point in life is the real world. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's the reality we're in. So we just need to grow the fuck up. We need to actually stop conflating entertainment and politics. Stop trying to entertain each other. And we need to do a better job. And so ultimately, we have an opportunity now to reset. If we don't take it, we will lose the country. So the stakes couldn't be higher. And we can't get too precious. We can't start thinking that we have the luxury of time or of doing it perfectly or that we have to do it perfectly. Frankly, we need to show up. We need 50 million people on the streets. Trust me, I was at Lafayette Square. I handled that for Protect Democracy, the response to Lafayette Square. And I will remind everybody that when protesters surrounded the White House, Donald Trump went to the POC, to the Presidential Emergency Operations Center, which is a bunker. That's how afraid he was of that crowd. We can create real fear without violence. We can put the fear of God into these people. We can fight Donald Trump psychologically. We can be smart about it. We can campaign with better candidates under a better model of genuine people trying to help other people genuinely. We can deprogram a lot of these young men, particularly who are lost in the belief that Joe Rogan is a hero. Joe Rogan is a loser. I don't care who needs to hear it. Joe Rogan is a fucking loser. And I'll tell you something. As somebody who's lived a life that those people sort of aspire to, whether it's like dating models or racing cars or whatever, I've done all that shit, and I can tell you, I'll save you the trouble. None of it is interesting if you're not full of purpose and meaning. And ultimately, that's what's missing. And this campaign, this Saving America, can become the purpose and meaning for all those toxic young men who are looking for something to do. But we need to feed it to them in a way that attracts them.
Yeah,
we need to
absolutely.
put the right bait on the rod. And so ultimately, guys, opportunity is everywhere. We're just not doing it because we're entertained by it. And we have to remember that this is our job now to stand up and do the hard work of saving America, not watching it on our TV thinking, oh, that's fun. We need to show the fuck up.
Yeah. John, and I want to get you on this here because the entertainment thing, I really think is a great point that Carlos brought up because Fox News did this first, or at least did it first more effectively. Maybe you could go back to Rush Limbaugh, like in the pre-Fox News days, but where they took serious topics and said, we can get more eyeballs on serious topics by making them entertainment. Now, I think in a vacuum, there's nothing technically wrong with that because I do say that a lot, that
Jon Stewart, John Oliver, they do it very effectively. They do the same thing.
Exactly. Because if you want, or us, honestly, if you want people to listen to you and to pay attention to you, it is not enough just to read them information or regurgitate facts. People need to be captivated by or engaged at least with what you're saying. But Fox News, they ended up taking it and said, well, okay, we don't even need to tell the truth. We can just, play on people's fears. We can make people afraid of cities and of feminists and more afraid of black people and immigrants and just hypercharge that. And John, I think you know the stat of this. What is it? Is it like 21 or 23 Fox News employees now work for the White House? Well, what is it?
Oh, I don't know the stat top.
Okay, I thought you brought it up.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It is a significant amount, and it's interesting with the Wall Street Journal and the Rupert Murdoch and all of that intrigue going on. A lot of stuff, it's all built on sand. Like what Carlos, what both of you are saying is correct. This is an incredibly effective way to get through to people, but eventually, the buck stops somewhere. You can't keep playing this game of entertain. Eventually, the chickens are going to come home to roost. And Carlos, you mentioned how Obama was a centrist, and he governed as one, but he didn't campaign as one. At the very least, not in 2008. And he campaigned as a progressive. He was very anti-establishment. He was talking about big,
he was creating a movement. He was,
and then he didn't. He didn't get those things accomplished. And this isn't a bash Obama. He's terrible or anything. There's criticism of him and good things he did. But I think that really is what cracked open the door for someone like Donald Trump to step in, because he could step in and be like, hey guys, Mr. Hope and Change didn't work either. Now you need something crazy. And people were like, well, fuck. Well,
yeah.
The Republicans didn't work. Democrats didn't work. Let's go with this fucking guy.
But
and that's kind of the energy.
I don't know, but I don't know if I would. It's kind of funny because, I mean, I agree with a lot of what you said, but I don't think it's germane to the conversation here, which is we're stuck in an attention economy. We're not going to change that.
Yeah.
But we're not changing to adapt to an attention economy, which is insane.
Yes.
That's the insanity. We can leverage it. We have better characters. We have a better story to tell. We have a more entertaining story to tell. No, I know, but I'm just saying the Democrats have talent up and down that could connect with people. They're younger. They know how to use the technology. Mamdani is an example of that, etc. But we need to figure it out as a party, how to create a show that adds the substance of what we're talking about, the purpose, the meaning of saving the country, and presents it through a cast of characters, both within the party and outside of the party. People like me doing the movement work, giving speeches, people like AOC and Jasmine and others in leadership, showing that passion on the ground and connecting with people on a human level and saying, this is what we're going to try and do for you. If we can do those, if we can just adapt to that attention economy and create a new communications plan that post-Carville, post-Begala, post-Obama, post-Pfeiffer, post all those guys. I mean, think about it. Joe, if you had asked Barack Obama what the worst part of his White House was, he will tell you it was the communications operation. So why did Joe Biden hire all of the same people? These are basic lessons that we have just failed to apply. And honestly, as soon as we apply them, the situation will get better. It's a conditional response thing. As soon as we start producing a better show with a better cast and better characters, the situation will improve immediately. The fear of doing that is that a lot of old people will have to quit their jobs.
Yeah. I think that the problem the Democrats have with this, Carlos, is you're right. The Republicans are infinitely better at this. It's actually not a surprise at all that they've jumped out to such a big lead in the media. News media. Fox News has been the biggest cable news program in my memory. I can't remember when it wasn't. With podcasts and with like people who weren't even like politically affiliated. Like, we think about someone like Joe Rogan and folks like that. These guys didn't start out as political podcasters. In fact, they probably wouldn't even call themselves political podcasters. But the conservatives got their hooks into them, and they even do this in the government itself. Like, I think the problem the Democrats have with adapting to this is that Democrats, for a lot of good reasons, are strong proponents of upholding institutions, which, it's not bad in and of itself. We need those. But when you have that as your guiding mindset, you're going to end up falling in love, or at least having a strong affinity to seniority and decorum. And that's what's hurting us. That's why Chuck Schumer is still around. That's why someone who's not going to ruffle feathers like Hakeem Jeffries, gets risen to the top. Like Nancy Pelosi, right. For everyone to say about her, she was very good at her job at being Speaker of the House, right? Yes. I mean, she was a good communicator. She was a good fundraiser.
No, she was the best. She was Lyndon Johnson for the House.
Exactly.
Best who ever did.
That's good. Yeah, she got people the fuck in line. She didn't have votes out there that were surprised or anything like that. And so when the Democrats are trying to move forward, they're going to defer to people in seniority, like Ruth Bader Ginsburg or Dianne Feinstein or Chuck Schumer and Joe Biden. You know, they're going to say these are the people we need. The Republicans are not limited by any of that. Republicans, Marjorie Taylor Greene's been in Congress, what, 3 or 4 terms, and she's one of the most powerful people there. Matt Gaetz was there till he, you know, dropped out and everything. They have no problem adapting to what is hot right now, which, once again, should be our thing, not theirs.
Not only that, but keep in mind that the balance of truth is on their side, meaning a Republican can lie 100 times.
Yeah.
And a Democrat only has to do it once. But you know what's funny? That comes from the left. Meaning, I have found the Democrats, meaning Democratic voters, are much more active in holding their own side to the letter of the law, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, a Democratic voter is more likely to react passionately to something Democrats say that's 20% false.
Yep.
And they are to Republicans, and something a Republican would say that's 100% false.
Yeah.
And that bias is an interesting communications challenge that means that Democrats have to not just perform, but outperform Republicans just to get back to even.
Yeah, it's true.
So you talk about the respect for institutional, progression, if you will, or for seniority. Those two things, we're going to have to make a choice here. Because either you're going to perform better so that you meet that gap, that pre-existing bias, and overcome it, or we're going to protect the old timers. You can't do both in an attention economy. You have to produce a show, and the star of your show can't be Chuck Schumer. You just can't. I don't care what the fucking show is. The star can't be Chuck Schumer. The only show where Chuck Schumer could be the star is where the star's already dead and we're telling the story of how he died. You know what I mean?
If Chuck Schumer is your cleanup hitter, you are not going anywhere.
You have a fucking problem. You know what I'm saying? And so, honestly, like my point to you guys is, there's a lot of nuance here, and obviously we can't cover it all in an hour of conversation. But the Democrats are the problem, meaning I'm more frustrated. I understand the Republicans. I understand what they're trying to achieve. I've lived under elected fascism. I understand the threat of that and what that looks like, and I understand greed and why people have it. I understand, I have a grand theory of politics, which is that in high school, the popular and the beautiful and the talented went to LA to be actors and actresses. The really smart kids went to Palo Alto to be, to work in tech and get rich doing tech stuff. And the jocks went to Wall Street. And then most normal people stayed home. And then everybody who still wanted to be important but didn't have any of the skill set, they all went to DC. And the ones who got laid in high school became Democrats, and the ones who didn't became Republicans. And that's kind of like my general guide to how politics happens in America. And what that means, though, is that we're stuck with people who really want to be important. And honestly, what we need right now is people who don't give a shit about being important. We need people who are willing to step up and say, my country's in trouble. And by the way, we have them in spades. I'll tell you guys about a guy named Cliff Cash. Cliff Cash is a comedian, and a good one. And he travels the country in his van, and he gives comedy shows. That's what he does for a living. And Cliff is now one of the main guerrilla protest organizers in this country. And he's leveraged his incredible talent for public speaking to go out there and organize like the anti-Fox. I did one of his protests. I led it in front of Fox News. And then in a super meta moment, it ended up on Gutfeld. And Gutfeld called me a terrorist because of the protest. I thought that was super meta. But my point is that Cliff has stepped up, right? I've stood up. Jessica Denson, who fought Trump NDAs, and she won the case all on her own. It's a saga, a legal saga. A woman without a lawyer beat Donald Trump in court and got all the NDAs, invalidated. These stories are out there, man. These heroes, these people are out there. They're doing the work. But we're focusing on Hakeem Jeffries and we're focusing on Chuck Schumer. And we just, as a party, as a people, need to sit down a minute and say, who are we going to elevate? Mamdani is a great leader. I don't even have to agree with his policies to say he's a great leader. And right now we need great leaders because we need to produce a great show. And so let's elevate the talent. And let's forget about being so precious about always being right. Let's forget about being so ideologically pure that we can't accept people who disagree with us on some poor issues. Let's just bring the talent to the front. Let's put our best team on the field. Let's give them good coaching. Let's build a good strategy. The Democrats are a way more talented party than the Republicans, and I know that because Mike Johnson is the head of the Congressional Republicans.
Oh God, Mike Johnson. Mike Johnson. Listen, Mike Johnson, it was a weird situation how he became speaker anyway. They had all those votes back and forth. And then, if my memory serves me correctly, they chose him because this guy was just some dude who had no ambition or whatever. And all right, we'll put him in as a placeholder. And he's still there. And
we still don't know what the deal was with his black son.
Oh my God, yes. If we're gonna start investigating this Epstein shit, Mike Johnson, when he was like 24 or something, adopted a 14-year-old black boy.
Maybe adopted.
Oh, not technically. Yeah, not technically adopted. You're right. Yeah, yeah. And
no, if he had technically adopted him, that's safer ground because now he's a parent.
Oh, yeah.
Is this the son that he like talks about jacking off with?
No, different son. No, that's a
different
son. Yeah, that's a biological son. Yeah, this is before he had any kids. He is like 24 or something, and he and his wife just got married, and they somehow knew this kid, and he had come from a rough background. He may or may not have been homeless or something like that, and they kind of brought him into the house. And and Carlos is right. There wasn't a legal adoption. He was just living there with these people who were like 5 years older than him or something. And then he mentioned the only reason people know is because he was trying to defend his racism or something. And he says, no, I'm not racist. Actually, I have a black son. They're like, what? You do? And they started looking into his background, and they looked at all his family photos from the last 10 years. He's not there. They're like, well, wait a minute. Where is this guy? And they tracked him down. He's like 40 years old now or something. He says, oh, yeah, I lived with the Johnson family for a while. I've seen them.
I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, that's basically what happened. He goes, yeah, I see them from time to time, but I don't really want to talk about it. Yeah, we're like, oh, okay, all right, yeah, weird shit.
That's not concerning at all.
No, it's not concerning at all, especially in the context of like Epstein. And my point to you guys is, it is crazy that we are surrendering so much of the field that we think it's normal that a president who very likely raped children is president, that an entire Congress is being shut down by Mike Johnson, who himself has these kinds of issues in his background, to protect child rape, and that Democrats are finding it hard to be competitive against that, and that they don't feel that they have a problem is absolutely fucking insane.
Ridiculous.
It's out of control. And the fact that Democrats don't fire everybody it's just as delusional as the Republicans in a sense. It's
Carlos,
even worse.
It is worse. Carlos, did you see last week? Because the Epstein thing, I don't know. I'm not convinced it's going to crack the Trump base, but it is the strongest weapon I've seen so far. I haven't seen anything come close, and I think it's good the Democrats were at least pushing the Epstein File votes. Great, just to get it out there so that people see. Every other day, they should be seeing news articles saying the Republicans reject releasing the Epstein votes. And by the way, why
kind of wild? I haven't seen an ad on TV yet about it. Like it's not that hard.
Yeah, and did you see last week Nancy Pelosi said, "I think this whole Epstein thing is a distraction." Like, Nancy, what are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about?
No. I mean, honestly, guys, the Democrats, man. It's so bad it's hard to talk about because we've just spent 30 minutes ranting at them, and we've barely done 1% of the ranting that needs to be done about just how incompetent or complicit or whatever the story is these people are. And so American opposition is going to take it upon ourselves to replace a bunch of Democrats in the primaries. We are not loyal to this party in that way. We want to make this party better. We're doing a program called Democratic Opposition, and the idea is that because we're a super PAC and we can campaign for people in a non-coordinated way, we're actually going to go out and campaign for the right people, and that's going to be a huge feature of next year.
With that, Carlos, and you were talking about how a lot of these folks in politics want to be important. They want to be popular and everything. Do you see this as one of the major flaws of the Democrats or people on the left in general, or liberals and leftists in general? Because what I always point out is the fascists have won. They've taken over large swaths of the country. Their opinions are mainstream now. Like, honestly, it is wild to watch public discourse over the last 25, 30 years in that stuff people...
1 year.
Over the last 1 year, that's true. But it's like stuff that people say out loud now on Beyonce's internet, you would have never said 10 years ago. Like the bigotry, the hostility, the racism, the sexism. The open Nazism, people are just, waving around all over the place, wouldn't have happened in the past, so things have gotten worse. But their victory is well earned. I hate to give credit to the devil is due, but it is. I always say that the Republicans that have been at this for about 60 years now. Like the second the Civil Rights Act passed, they galvanized their base. They rallied the troops. They started running in every school board, every General Assembly meeting. They were showing up for all that. They put in that work and it paid off. Only a few decades later, I don't see that kind of dedication on our side. I do see what you were talking about. People want to be popular. They want to, but putting in the actual elbow grease. Yeah, a lot of people do it, but I don't think it matches anything of what I saw even 25, 30 years ago from the Republicans when I first started paying attention to politics.
No, there's no comparison.
Mm-hmm.
Put it this way: the average American reads at a 7th grade level. Donald Trump speaks at a 5th grade level. I did when I was at Protect Democracy in 2020, I studied all Democratic messaging, and none of it was reading at lower than an 11th grade level. So nothing the Democrats said in 2020 was understood by their intended audiences, period.
Mm-hmm.
That all goes back, and you talk inside baseball, that all goes back to a woman named Anat Shenker-Osorio. Anat is the messaging guru behind all of the Democrats' messaging for about the past 10 years, and she's terrible.
You don't say.
Really?
You don't say.
And the fact that people keep listening to her is insanity. I told her to her face that she was terrible. I told her to her face what the problem was. She did not fix it. So
what are some of her greatest hits, Carlos? Like what?
No. I mean, dude, I won't even get into it because the level of anger that it delivers in my soul is immediate and visceral. But honestly, look, I would get these messaging guidance documents from her, like to try to get everybody on the same page. And we were dealing with 400 groups, so that was useful as a construct, right? Getting everybody saying the same things. It was a huge part of why this campaign would succeed is that we were at least aligned on what we were saying. But honestly, I would read these paragraphs and I would go, this is not it. And I would tell her to her face directly, like, this is terrible. And here's why. And I'm not just trying to say that. Here's why. And my point to you guys is that there's a lot of institutional rot that goes deeper than the people that the public is aware of in the Democratic Party. There's a lot of people who want to be popular. And then the final bit of this, which I have to stress because it's something that I'm keenly aware of based on where I sit in this movement. They're just cowards. If you go to DC, and I've been to DC a lot as part of this, I give speeches in DC all the time. It's my favorite thing is to speak in front of the Capitol, because as a kid from the Dominican Republic, speaking in front of the Capitol is awesome, right? That's like my mom sees that and says, oh, you're doing something that's actually real, Yeah. But the main thing is that I meet with all the members of Congress. And they're just cowards. They're just cowards. They never contemplated a world, and not just the politicians. Listen, I worked for an organization called Protect Democracy in 2020. That was a central driver of why we had a successful 2020 election amidst the pandemic and under Donald Trump. Genuinely, Protect Democracy was the central player in a campaign that saved the nation. Time magazine called it the secret bipartisan campaign that saved the 2020 election. Much credit to the AFL-CIO and a couple of other groups that all were also at the center of that. My point is, Protect Democracy, as bad as it gets, the Avengers of politics, the best lawyers, lobbyists, and communicators in the country, all under one roof. Where are they now? Democracy Forward is doing the work that Protect Democracy should be doing. And it's not to say that that Protect Democracy has completely left the field, but what they're essentially doing is they've become a think tank. They're writing. And trust me, a blog post is not going to save us at this moment. And I don't want to just single out protect democracy. I'm doing it because I know them. And if they're not showing up, then so many other people are less capable and less courageous than they are. So even some very courageous, very previously successful people are failing to show up at this moment. Downstream of that, most of the representatives in Congress and all of their staffs, what triggers me is that when I meet with the staff people and I tell them, come out to a protest with us, they're just chicken shit. And so we have a level of cowardice from people who promised that they would show up that is hard to measure. And honestly, it's so disappointing. And as somebody who's been out there on the front lines from day one, it would be almost impossible for them to earn my respect by this point.
Mhm.
And I would tell them, you know what? If you haven't shown up, it took the first one to do it, and I have to give them credit, was the League of Women Voters joined us on April 5th for the hands off. That was the first mainstream group to join our movement. But it took them until April. The movement started in February 5th.
Mhm.
We had done a bunch of shit before anybody, Move On, League of Women Vote, all these groups finally joined now. Public Citizen joined now. And when they join now, they try to tell us what's acceptable to them. And I'm sitting here going, you don't get to fucking talk. You need to sit for a minute and do 2 or 3 protests where you don't say a fucking word. Because you need to earn that right.
Carlos hit him with the sit your white ass down. And shut up.
Seriously, man, it bothers me. It bothers me because the level of cowardice that we're talking about, and these are people that said they promised they would help in a moment of desperate need, and instead of showing up, they sat on the sidelines, waited till the water was comfortable, then got in. Now they're trying to set terms. They're trying to neuter the movement, by the way. They're trying to make it look and feel like every other thing they do, which is how we got here in the first place. Listen, if you're a major nonprofit, a political nonprofit, and you are comfortable right now, you are not where you need to be.
Yeah, amen.
Carlos, right. I want to take what you just said, and I want to kind of condense it down into one specific thing, because it relates specifically to Epstein and things that I see you saying, or at least American opposition saying online, and the way you speak about it. And you do not mince your words when you talk about Donald Trump raping kids. You hard R. He's a pedophile. He's raping children. We have a rapist as president. AOC also, you've mentioned her a couple times as an effective character that the Democrats can be getting behind. She has also called Donald Trump a rapist. Very few Democrats have, and I feel like it's because of what you're talking about, of they're afraid to. It rocks the boat. Using those words make them uncomfortable. And I remember me and TJ did a show a couple months ago about we need to get these fucking grape, pew pews, all these like infantile words that we're using to describe these real serious topics out of our fucking vocabulary, because when we do, it sounds like corporate HR speak. It sounds like it's not really what it is. We're whitewashing real serious shit. And I feel like that's part of the reason that these things slip through the cracks, because we just don't fucking confront them head on. And I think we see this on an interpersonal level. Let me finish. I'm going to throw you, Carlos. We see this on an interpersonal level, I feel like, all the time in like family drama of like, Uncle Tony, he's got like, don't let the little girls around him. And it's like, bro, we are protecting these people by refusing to say what the fuck they are. And for whatever reason, even though the Democratic Party has all the ammunition in the world to hit Trump on the weakest, the biggest political scandal in history, if they could nail him on this, they're just scared to do it.
And I mean, it's a beautiful observation, because it speaks to that cowardice. It also speaks to the normalization that I talked about of everybody wanting to do it the way they've always done it. We talked about it with Kurt Carville. The idea of like the last successful thing we remember, that's the model for how to succeed in the future, is a very strong idea undergirding all of this. But frankly, look, you can't apologize for yourself before you talk, because you rob yourself of all meaning. I'm here blasting groups by name. That's going to create challenges for me. I'm the leader of a group that has to navigate relations with these groups. And if I tell Protect Democracy, you're not doing what you should be doing, because Democracy Forward is doing what you should be doing, they might take that as an insult. But it's not meant that way. I love Protect Democracy. They gave me a job. They gave me a paycheck. I did my best work under them up until now. And we fucking crushed it. I love them. So when I criticize you, it's because I love you and I want you to get better. When I criticize Democrats, it's because I love the Democratic Party and I need it to be better. Because my mission is to save this fucking country, and that is a serious mission. And I'm not here to represent a problem and fundraise off of it and get rich. I'm here to fucking face a problem, solve it, and move the fuck on. And so my main answer to you is, if we can't call rape rape, if we don't believe victims, look, if somebody gets accused of rape and it was a false accusation, and they prove it in court and it's great, they can get out of that conversation and hopefully restore their lives. I appreciate the hesitancy around using that word. It's a strong word. It carries a lot of meaning. And if you slap that label on somebody, it's a forever label. But how many women are we talking about? Are we saying that over 30 women that have no incentive to revisit this, that are not going to get any money from Trump in a civil suit at this point, that all of them are lying?
Yeah.
Or you know what I'm saying? Or the fact that we've seen the videos of him with Epstein. They were clearly best friends. And Epstein, by the way, Ghislaine Maxwell is serving time for trafficking children for Jeffrey Epstein, which
For
means
now.
Donald Trump, right? And then the cover-up proves the crime. And they're covering it up right in front of our eyes. Somebody from the DOJ is meeting with Ghislaine Maxwell as we speak. And so my point to you is, we have to be able to call everything what it is.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is more than likely, he's an adjudicated rapist. He's already a rapist.
There you go. Yeah, it's already one.
I was going to say, we know it is proven in court of law. He forcibly fingered a woman. That is right.
Right. And if you believe the victims and if you believe the circumstance, it is pretty easy to see that Donald Trump is a child rapist. And if you can't fucking say that, and if you can't say it with the conviction it requires, because by the way, if the line is not child rape, then where the fuck is it?
Where is it? Yeah, and it also, even if you want to be as charitable as possible, more charitable than you should be any time in your life to Donald Trump, you have to admit he has incredibly poor judgment. You have to admit that. I challenge any of you to produce as many pictures of you with someone else as there are pictures of Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. They're all over the place. He can't deny it. He is on video and on radio talking about Epstein, how much he loves this guy, how he's a terrific person, how they hang out. Jeffrey Epstein says the same thing. So there's corroborating evidence on this. There's paper trails going back. Like, I didn't really understand the big deal, honestly, with the weird birthday card thing that they posted in the Wall Street Journal, because everything else I've seen with Trump and Epstein is 100 times worse. Like, then
Jeffrey Epstein was asked straight on, have you ever socialized with Donald Trump and women under the age of 18? He said, I'm going to take the 5th, the 9th, and the 14th.
Yeah.
He didn't just take the 5th. He took 3 amendments.
I'm still confused how the 14th was applicable.
You know what?
Hey,
he needed every piece of ammunition he could
scattershot. Yeah, he's like,
if he could have taken the 2nd, he would have pulled out a gun and started shooting people. Honestly, that dude was looking for every amendment that said the word private, because that dude was desperate. And my point to you guys is, look, I agree with you. Donald Trump, the preponderance of the evidence suggests that he has raped children. Whether or not he has is not really the point, because he is clearly part of a pattern of behavior of rape and sexual abuse of women, of children, you name it. He's a part of a pattern that I understand, because remember, In New York in the 80s, I was a kid, but I remember there was a place called Plato's Retreat. It was a swingers club for upper class New Yorkers where they would go with their partners to eyes wide shut kind of situation. This has been a part of that polluted society for a very long time. And Donald Trump doesn't just want to be a leader of that, he wants to be the leader of that. Been his lifelong dream. Donald Trump is the worst case scenario for humanity. Like, you can't be a worse human being than that dude. And my question is, how are we framing this conversation that he's not only legitimate, still got a 42% approval rating.
Yeah.
As president of the United States, when he's like the worst human being any one of us is aware of, period.
And Carlos, this goes into something. It's similar to what you and John are talking about, but I have had enough with Democrats trying to separate Trump from the Republican Party. They have been doing this for 10 years now. How often have we heard Hakeem Jeffries say a phrase I just can't stand? Extreme MAGA Republicans. It's like, no, right. This is the Republican Party. Okay, I know you wish it was otherwise, but this is what it is. Trump has a 90% approval rate with the Republican Party, like he always fucking does. They love him. So we have to just accept the fact that millions of people love this guy, that love everything he stands for. Carlos, we were talking about how the preponderance of the evidence points to the fact that he is a child predator. He's an admitted child predator. Not only does he talk about how he wants to fuck his own daughter, but he also said that he owned a teen Miss America pageant, like for girls 16 and under. And he said that he would walk in on their dressing rooms while they were changing. People know this. This is common knowledge. They still love him.
That is, if your intent is to see naked young girls, that is by definition statutory rape.
Yes, it's just, there's no justification for that action.
No,
you can't give one. Yeah.
And it's funny because I judged Miss USA 3 times, and I judged Miss Teen USA 3 times as part of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting how much work goes into making sure the judges and everybody, sort of the adults, don't engage with the contestants.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact very explicitly to try to protect people. And I won't get into the pageant experience. It's an interesting thing, but I will say that there are a lot of checks against that kind of behavior. And the fact that he was explicitly saying, and that's a source of pride, that is that if Ivanka wasn't his daughter, he would be dating her, that kind of thing. Honestly, how many more examples do we need? Just take that one line. If my daughter were not my daughter, I'd be fucking her.
Yep.
Just take that one construct. If that doesn't disqualify him from being president to you, you're fucked up, and you need to get better somehow.
Yeah.
And we just need to deal with you for a minute and just please consider, if you don't think Donald Trump wanting to fuck his own daughter disqualifies him from being the most powerful man on earth, what the fuck is your problem? How can I help you? Because your existence is moot. There's nothing you could ever say or do to redeem yourself from that. So honestly, man, we are lost.
Country full of these people, Carlos. Country full of these people. Yeah, I know. It is insane. And we gotta write this shit. What are you gonna say, John?
So I was gonna say, I mean, it to me, there's that line. To me, that line with the Ivanka thing, it's like, you can get one of those out, and if you're like a really good fucking person, I'm like, okay, it was a joke, a bad joke, but it's the continuous, as you said, a pattern of behavior of things that he has said and done and been caught doing over the years. Again, we know that he's raped a woman. That is without a doubt. We all know that. But it always goes back to me to the grab him by the pussy thing. I
don't even wait.
When America heard that, again, a lot of us were like, oh, it's fucking over for him. Because we all understand that to be fucking rape. And or at the very least, sexual assault. And so many Americans heard that and went, oh no, that's fucking normal. And it's been very scary to me.
More than normal. They want to do it. They see the problem is that there's a huge toxic population who either want to do it or want to have it done to them.
Yeah, I was going to say that. Yeah.
They feel that navigate. Look, I don't know how to say this in a way that doesn't sound self-serving, but I grew up as a very privileged person. I lived at the Carlisle Hotel in New York for 5 years. I got to party with DiCaprio in the late 90s. I got to do all of the things. The trip to St. Bart's, Saint-Tropez. I lived in Monaco for 3 years. I've been to every party that counts. The Vanity Fair Oscar party I got invited to in 2003. Like, I've been there. And I get why people are attracted to the lifestyle that Donald Trump is trying to sell you. I really do. I understand why. And I understand that people who don't have power or money think that power and money should come with the ability to control other people. I genuinely understand why that is a through line that the brain draws, because you want to be powerful. You want to be able to get things that you wouldn't normally be able to get. That's the psychology. And as somebody who's lived it, it's hard for me to begrudge other people wanting that lifestyle, right? The jet set thing, the yachts, the planes, the parties, the women or the men or whatever the case may be. But the one thing that I would draw from this moment in time that we're living in, and that I would say to all Americans, is none of the people who've lived those lives exclusively are happy. They end up as Elon Musk, or they end up as Peter Thiel, or they end up as Mark Cuban, and you see them. They're like working out their psychological issues at the expense of everybody else. They have names like Trump. They have names. You see them. Meanwhile, I'm going to propose a counter proposal, which is somebody like Barack Obama, who is living that life because he's on a yacht somewhere and he's having a good time. But he also has a life full of purpose and meaning, and he's an interesting person, and he's faithful to his wife. LeBron James, another example of a person who's conducted himself to this point flawlessly on every front and has tried to imbue his life with not just basketball, but meaning and purpose and learning. Shaquille O'Neal, another example. Like, you just have, there is a greater purpose and capacity than just being rich and being able to move other people because you're rich.
Carlos,
It's
I think
about education. It's about empowerment. And honestly, we need to aspire to more than just being a fucking douchebag like Elon Musk.
Right. Well, yeah, low bar for Elon Musk. Yeah, no, but
Right.
So I think a lot of it does involve envy, or and the envy of like, oh, I would love that lifestyle. They say this about Trump all the time. How when people would bring up that, well, Trump cheats on his taxes, what do they say? Wow, well, look how smart he is. I wish I was smart enough to cheat on my taxes and stuff like that. A lot of it too is that the conservative mindset or conservative framework is built on essential hierarchies, whether sexual, biological, or economic hierarchy, whatever, like, they are in love with it. So I think it's even more than the fact that they want to be rich. They want to be the 1%. They also believe, like, deeply, the 1% does get to do whatever they want. They've earned that right. And that's why the stratification matters so much, because whatever strata they're in, there's always someone lower. You can always find someone lower. And so they're like, well, I can exercise my power. Like, it's okay if I'm on Medicaid, but black people, who the fuck do they think they are to be on Medicaid? They haven't earned it. They're too lazy for it. Like, that stratification means a lot to them. So watching Trump get away with that, they admire it. And even if they don't, even if they think, well, that's morally wrong, well, it doesn't matter. Rules don't apply to that class of society. And I think that explains that.
But that's my point, is that what they're only seeing is half. And what I would say is this: look, you can have a life where you're rich and you can motivate people because you're rich. That's Elon Musk. That's Donald Trump. But if you want to shoot for something, shoot for being the most educated, shoot for being the most interesting, shoot for learning 5 languages, shoot for playing instruments, musical instruments, or learning to write and arrange music or read music or whatever. Shoot for being an all of the above human being, where you're rich and interesting and powerful, but you also have meaning and purpose behind that. And now you're an all of the above human being. And that's where the Barack Obamas, the Shaquille O'Neals, examples of people who are trying to build up in all other areas. Those are admirable ways of achieving that same status. But then you're moving people not because you're rich, you're moving them because you inspire them, or because you lead them, or because if you run a company or you build a company. I built a company from scratch, and I know how it feels to pay people who are feeding their kids with the checks that you're signing, right? That's an aspiration that's awesome. What I don't want to see is more people wanting to just be rich and don't do any work.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that leads to a shitty life. That leads to a shitty human being. And so much of what we're facing right now, and my macro point is, so much of what we're facing is at the hands of like these tech guys, Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk. They're just insecurity personified, and no amount of money is gonna fucking solve that.
Nope, zero.
And so learn from their mistakes. If you are trying to become successful, do not try to become rich with nothing else. Try to become everything that you ever hoped of being. The best advice I can give people is this: imagine the coolest old person you can imagine, and then make every decision they would have made. It's fucking simple. And if you never make an exception, you're guaranteed to become that person.
I like
Because
that. I like
so
that.
much of this is about having a fucking vision for your own life that's bigger than just being able to tell other people what to do. That's something that's better earned. If you want to be a leader, earn it. And then when you tell people what to do, they're not going to do it because you're telling them. They're going to do it because you inspire them and they want to follow your lead. And that choice, that makes you truly powerful. Elon Musk isn't powerful. Elon Musk is rich, but he's a loser on every other front.
God damn. Elon Musk is so pathetic. It is like Elon Musk is my go-to whenever people talk about, what do you hear guys say? Well, you know, you get a lot of money, all the women will like you. Do you know any women who lust over Elon Musk? I'll give you my house if you can name one. It's not going to happen. Like your personal traits mean a whole lot. And yeah, there's nothing worse than giving someone that vapid and uninteresting money. And Musk is the hyper example of it. And Zuckerberg, I guess, would be a follow-up one. What you got there for us, John?
It's so funny, like on that specific point, like to me, hearing you guys say this, I'm like, oh yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I can't even fathom wanting to fuck someone because I'm rich and powerful or whatever. Like I'm just like, to me, it's like sex isn't even that like sex can be great, but like sex with a random stranger, yeah, it's fun, it's okay, but like the gratifying part to me is fucking earning it. The gratifying part to me is, oh shit, I'm interesting enough, I'm cool enough.
I agree.
This person wanted to fuck me.
Right.
And if that isn't the case, if I'm just grabbing them by the pussy because they'll let me do it because I'm rich, what the fuck? Like that doesn't give me shit. I don't even understand why that's appealing.
But think about it this way: it's the same thought that these bounty hunter ICE agents are being proposed with.
Yeah,
you get to commit violence just because you can, because you've been deputized to do it. Now, the cop who's been on the beat for 30 years and earns the wisdom of knowing how to deconflict, how to be responsible with power, how to be a good cop. And there are many, 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 many good cops who've earned their authority and who can step into a situation and deconflict it and de-escalate it by sheer presence. If you lay that out as the ideal, then the strategy to get there changes. But if your ideal is, I just want to have power so that I can beat people, you end up with a very different result. And my point is, we will become whoever we target becoming. Whoever the old person we're trying to become and keep faith with, that's what we will become over time. And right now we're aiming at the wrong goal. And we're becoming the wrong thing. And the way I know this is very simple. We've gone from Shakespeare to 50 Shades of Grey, from Michael Jackson to Justin Bieber, from you name it, in terms of the qualitative experience of being human. And we're still claiming progress. We've become a Kim Kardashian society. We used to be an Audrey Hepburn society. That was our ideal. And guess what? Audrey Hepburn, you end up with JFK. Kim Kardashian, of course you end up with Donald Trump. That is the natural result. And Kim Kardashian country elects Donald Trump because that is the most ridiculous country. And so we just need to, on a structural level, we need to start thinking about who we want to become, not just as individuals, but as a country. We need to target ourselves at substance, at purpose, at meaning, at talent, at being interesting and challenged and wrong sometimes, and arguing and finding our way and learning, and
Yeah.
And if we don't get back on that track, man, Idiocracy is gonna become a documentary, and that's where we are.
Yeah.
We're like, in fact, President Camacho was more morally
better president.
right,
Yes.
than Donald Trump.
Hard agree.
President Camacho was-
President Camacho had much more empathy and much more of a heart, and was willing to listen to counsel more than I agree 100%.
Yeah, there you go. President Camacho, when he heard that the smartest guy on earth was available, he went and got him to try to make the country a better place. You know?
Absolutely, more than Trump would ever do.
He went into the House of Representatives and introduced him to the world.
I agree. Yeah. All right, so we got to wrap up in a little bit, but I wanted to just say one more thing before I toss to John here, is that Carlos, this isn't an attack on you by any means, so please take it in the spirit in which it's intended. But you mentioned that there were many, many, many good cops. Did we need 3 minis? Did we need 3? I know there are good cops out there. 3 just seemed like, I was okay, I know there are good cops out there, but wow, 3 minis, that is...
fair enough.
Yeah.
No, listen.
Yeah, just mess with you, man. Just mess with you. Yeah.
I will answer that substantively to say the following. I am in danger all the time. I get a lot of death threats. And every time I show up at a protest, one of my small things I do is that I go talk to the police officers on site. I explain that I'm going to be speaking, and I thank them for being there to keep us safe.
Yeah.
And I will say that 95% of the time, they look me right in the eye and they go, "We respect what you're doing," or "We agree with what you're doing," or some version of that. And then we have a peaceful protest. And I remember in DC when I did the Fox March, I asked the cops if we could do a march to CNN. And they said, "Yes, we will do that for you," without a permit, without pre-planning, because I had taken the time to give them the dignity of introducing myself and saying hello. And kind of my point is, humans become toxic when they feel that they're in a situation where they're in opposition to others. And confrontation breeds toxicity. Part of what we need to do is to outreach to communities like the cops, where there has been a lot of difference, a lot of vitriol, a lot of toxicity. And we need to just reintroduce ourselves and say, "Hey, man, I'm here. I want to be safe. Thank you for keeping me safe. I'm going to hold you accountable, but I'm also going to be fair. We need to govern each other, and we're going to do a better job of it together." Because frankly, I don't want to disavow police. They've been so good to me in this movement. I've lived them as a truly positive element of what I've done. And I know there are many bad cops too, but we're not going to get out of this by hating on people. We're going to get out of this by loving people, for real. And by the way, that's the only way we get out of this with something worth saving. Because my point before, when I said, if child rape isn't the line, then what the fuck is the line? I can't defend a country where child rape is acceptable, especially by the president. I can't. I don't want to. If that's going to be us, then I got to go. You know what I mean? So,
yeah, that's true. That's the truth. All right, John, you want?
Well, thank you guys for watching to the end of this video or episode. If you're watching us live, you might have been able to point out, like Huge Ass, that I misspelled Epstein in the title card. Make sure to be with us at 6:30 on Tuesdays and Thursdays if you want to insult us.
You also misspelled Jubilee.
This was okay.
And topics.
You know what? Usually I throw to our guest to tell people where to find them. But this okay. Carlos, you've been great. Carlos, if any of our audience right now want to know where to find you, where should they look?
Okay, so American Opposition is at americanopposition.org. They can sign up for our newsletter and they can donate. Please donate, because we need to raise more money than the racist people. Secondly, me personally, I'm on Threads at C Alvarez Aranjos, so my first initial and my 2 last names. And American Opposition is on Threads in a big way at American Opposition. We're also on Blue Sky at americanopposition.org. But honestly, we're easy to find. Our email is contact@americanopposition.org. We read every single email. We don't always respond, but we always read them. So if you have anything you need to reach out about, we are looking for large donors. We are looking for small donors. Basically, our biggest challenge is fundraising. So if anybody can help us on that front, it would be most appreciated. We are not going to waste your money. We need $5.5 million total to conduct everything we want to do through the midterm election. That is less than 5% of what Stephen Miller's PAC has raised. So I'm hoping we can meet that number so that we can give America a proper, good opposition that is worthy of this moment and that, more importantly, can win. And winning for us means getting to a free and fair midterm election or having Donald Trump removed before then. Simple as that. That is what we're trying to achieve. And we're doing every single thing possible to make that happen. So all of your support would really, really count.
Thanks so much, Carlos. We appreciate it. Fantastic guest. I love a guest that can go on a roll. We love that. Anytime that happens, we are all in. Folks, thank you so much for watching the show this evening. Just a reminder that today's episode was sponsored by the Scripps National Spelling Bee. Our contestant from the left wing will be John Cooper representing this show in 2026, and we wish him all the best. Folks, thanks so much. We'll catch you later. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys.